Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I want to start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. And today it's my pleasure to welcome back Sean Kelly. Now, Sean Kelly was first on the show back right in between the very first lockdown, I think it was. So it must be 3 years ago. And the reason why Sean's here is we were doing a best of with coming up to 160 episodes of Selling the Motor Trade. And you have so much data, and you can see that which episodes people really like, which ones people go back to, which ones rewind and listen to it again, and maybe they're playing it in sales meetings. And Sean's was one of the ones that really resonated with people. So we were doing the best of series, and I said, hey, listen, let's get Sean back on the podcast because so much has changed from when we first spoke to him. So Sean, welcome back, sir.
Oh, thank you, Skip. I've got to say, I'm not sure about that data. It might just be me, my friends and family listening to it 10 times each to bump the ratings up. But I'm welcome to come back, and thanks for your invitation again.
No problem. Hey, listen, doesn't it seem like the world has changed from when we sat down last time and done this? After the very first podcast that we did, I mean, we've got the whole agency model is coming along. We've got EVs now, the price of them, what's happening there. We've got Kazoo, the rise of Kazoo was still, I think it just had a valuation of 2 billion or something when we spoke last time. Now their valuation is significantly different. I mean, Pendragon, whenever you listen to this, may be sold by the time you listen to this. So there's so much we need to catch up on. But for people who don't know you, and shame on you, go back and listen to the first episode that we did with Sean. Can you let people know a little bit about your background and how you ended up being the managing director of Vines Motor Group?
Yeah, sure. Well, just a kind of quick potted history. I'm an accountant by trade, but it doesn't make me a bad person. I did 5 years for what was BMW GB, now BMW UK, as a regional manager. So I've got a bit of the manufacturer's experience. And funnily enough, Skip, 2023 is my 20th year on the motor retail side. So BMW, Mini, Man and Boy. And you've just alluded to it there. I think since we last spoke 3 years ago, the amount and the pace of change, both in our industry and in the economy and the political landscape and everything, is probably been faster than the prior 25 years that I've been involved in the motor industry. Yeah.
I tell you what, Sean, so many times you train these new people who were in the middle of COVID. I remember one guy in a BMW network, and it was right in the middle of COVID times, just past COVID times. And he was selling cars hand over fist. He was shelling peas, and he had that lovely arrogance that I know because I had it myself when I was selling cars. You can't teach me anything. I just said to him, when did you start the motor trade? And of course, bless him, Sean, he'd only been selling used BMWs for 18 months. I thought, goodness me, he doesn't know what the real world is yet. He hasn't had to sell. And I got to tell you what, it's changed now. And unfortunately, that person's no longer in the industry because he never learned how to sell. He didn't have to sell.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've definitely experienced some of that. I mean, the first 18 months out of the first lockdown were a boom time for motor dealers. Really, there was low supply and high demand, and I'm never going to say the job is easy because you're always dealing with customers who've got their predilections and so on. But it was certainly an unusual set of circumstances in terms of selling used cars, and new were almost impossible to get hold of. Probably in the last 18 months, we've seen the rise of EVs and the ups and downs in terms of the values of those vehicles. And obviously there's new technology to get your head around as well. And I think some of those employees who had little motor experience before COVID are really now having to work hard, and actually some of them haven't yet got the skills, if you like, to create deals rather than just accept orders. And I think we were in that lucky place that's now turned. So, yeah.
So true. You actually said at the time, you don't have to be a genius to sell a car at the moment, okay? And just after COVID. And a phrase that really resonated with me anyway, he said, Simon, when the job's bad, it's always the market. That's the issue. When the job's good, it's always us that's great. It can't be both, okay? And you said, yeah, sure, keep drinking with the bars open. But I want to ask you a question, Sean. Has last orders been shouted? We're in the
I'm
bar.
not sure about shouted, but the hand is on the bell to give it a ring, I think. And I think what we're seeing is we're still seeing, a buoyant used car market. Prices are still up compared to where they were a couple of years ago. But it's the external economic challenges that people are facing now, whether that's high interest rates, inflation, the general cost of living challenges, or indeed people coming off fixed rate mortgages to a new high. I think people are still in the market. People still want to have and own and drive a car. It's just you need to give them a real reason to spend their money with you. They need to see value in the proposition that you're putting forward to them. And as I said, I think on the first podcast, for a customer, a good deal isn't a number, it's a feeling. And it's about creating that feeling for customers, and probably even more so today than it was 18 months, 2 years ago. It's all about how customers feel about the individual and the product.
Yeah, people always buy people. I think they always will, always have. It's going to happen there. But let's look at some of the things there. What was it? 16 times interest rates went up in a row. Last time they actually put a halt onto them, but inflation is still going up. So next time, interest rates going to go up. We know the effect that has on people with their fixed rate mortgages coming to the end. People on variable rate mortgages are probably still crying, I think, with some of what's happened there. But what impact has that had on you as a motor dealer? I mean, used car stock, are you having to look at the funding of that? Are you going back to looking at stock turn and getting back to good 30, 60 days times there? What impact is that having on your business?
Well, the interest rate burden is significant. I mean, in terms of total cost this year versus last, it's double. I mean, after a good couple of years, what we've been in the fortunate position to do is to buy a lot of our cars for cash. So we're not necessarily borrowing the funds to then pay that interest cost. But nonetheless, we still charge a notional interest cost to the business. So that's gone up from a relatively sensible base to twice the amount this year. But the interest rate alone hits into every other area, because if a supplier of yours is funding their stock that then is coming into your business, you're paying more for that in the first place. If companies are investing in transportation and the logistics of getting things into your business, those prices are going up. So everything kind of stacks back in line with that. And the interest rate's one measure. The Bank of England is a number, but everybody else's product is that plus a margin. So the rates are just getting higher and higher and higher. I think in the medium term, they're predicted to kind of drop slightly, but only back to about 4%. And Simon, both you and I are not fortunate enough to be under the age of 40. Well, I'm definitely not. You don't look it. You don't look it, whatever. So, so anyone that's had to borrow money who's under the age of 40 has had it at pretty much zero interest. So they're not used to this environment, even though the rates are still relatively low historically. And sometimes it's just about that realignment of customer understanding of actually this is normal. What you had for the prior 10 years was abnormal. So, but there's a definite challenge in the business. And what we're doing is trying to, again, focus back on total value of stock that we hold, how quickly we turn that in terms of pricing and activity. We're definitely changing our profile of used cars to be older and therefore cheaper, and try and recognize that cost squeeze on consumers as well, Is that just because they're the vehicles you can get? We've sold less new cars, so clearly the vehicle park's lower. So we've had to take on older cars, or is that a choice to go down older cars to make them more affordable for consumers? It's kind of a bit of both, really, isn't it? I mean, we know the lack of new car registrations for the last 3 years is impacting that 1 to 3 year car park. So those cars just don't exist. But the reality of life is I've still got the same number of spaces on the forecourt. I've still got the same number of sales consultants and stuff that I need to feed. So if I'm going to hold the right amount of stock, I need to look older and perhaps a bit wider in terms of the model range that we're stocking as well. And we've been fortunate to be able to do that so far. So we've held up pretty well in terms of overall stock position. But what you can see is where we were, let's say 18 months, 2 years ago, you'd buy a car, you'd kind of check it over, give it a wash, put it on the forecourt, it'd sell in a week and sell for screen price. That whole period is taking longer now. The decision process for consumers is getting longer again. And then when you flip that into new cars, and especially electric vehicles, the period between initial inquiry to order is stretching out. And we're seeing an average of 10, 11, 12 weeks now from an original inquiry on a new vehicle to a confirmed order. That's much longer than it's been for the last couple of years.
What impact is that having on a salesperson on the floor now to the sales process they need to adopt? Do we have to get back into the 3 sales? We need to sell ourselves first, the product second, and then the numbers? Is it not just the numbers first, numbers second, numbers third? Are you seeing that change, or back to, can I say back to normality?
Well, I think you can say normal, and the normal for us, for you and me, and the people who've been in the business for a while, that's the abnormal to the people that we've recruited in the last 2 or 3 years. So at the moment, there's a little bit of a disconnect. And what I've seen over the last 6 months in my business is let's call them seasoned as opposed to old. Let's call them the seasoned.
You have a way with words.
The seasoned sales consultants are still hitting the mark, hitting their numbers, doing the do, all that sort of stuff. And arguably the people that we brought in that were fresher and younger and required a bit more training and development, they're just starting to struggle to keep the pace up. Now, it's my job and the rest of the team here at Vines to make sure that they're trained and coached and developed and motivated and all that jazz to get them to where they need to be. But it's definitely old school selling. I don't know if I hate expressions like that, but I kind of can't stop myself because I don't know another way of describing it. It is all about qualification, find the right car, build rapport with the customer. The demo drive's never been more important, especially with the technology in the cars. It's a mind-blowing experience now for some customers, especially if they haven't bought a new car for 3 or 4 years. The leap in technology is enormous in the vehicles. And then finally, a customer wants to have that good deal feeling, and it's our job to create that in the first place,
So much of what we're doing at the moment is getting customers who are addicted, if that's the right word, to paying $500 a month for their car, not realizing that interest rates have gone like this from when they changed their car. Price of new cars have gone straight up as well, but the used car is starting to come down. I don't believe used car prices come off a cliff like they did in 08, 09. I hope so. I'll get your views on that in a second, but I really hope they don't. But so many customers are addicted to paying $500 a month. And now we're saying it's easily going to be what, $800, $850, whatever it is. And it's good old fashioned talking about dead money. Mr. Customer, this is the money you're going to have to spend on your car over the next 12 months. It's money in the industry we call dead money. We have to talk about the roadside assistance, the fuel consumption savings, going from their current car to their hybrid and what they're going to save on that one there. That's the good old fashioned stuff that we need to get back into. In fact, Sean, it's back to prospecting. Speaking to people in the service department, and we've got a whole bunch of people that have no idea what to say to someone in the service department because they haven't had to do what you and I seasoned. Was that the word you used for old?
Seasoned?
Seasoned. So that's what I'm feeling out there. We've got to get the guys back to fighting for the deal there.
Yeah, that's it. And, you in a couple of recent podcasts, one of them, you talked about using the term the easiest part of my job when it was talking about the numbers. And it is that really. If you do all of the rest of the process properly, the numbers are the easiest bit, actually, because you've qualified them correctly, got the right car, built the desire, and actually said, you can afford it. Here's how we make that work, Mr. Customer. So, I think some of those podcast tips and tricks that you've put out are really true now. Not that they weren't in the past, but for the past couple of years, we've probably got away without having to use them.
So true.
And I think for me now, the critical thing is there are enough customers to buy every car that is coming new or used in our businesses, whatever make, model, franchise that you operate, or whether you're an independent. It's just about looking after that customer inquiry on the day. And it's also about finding the next deal from the pool of customers that already know you, whether they're coming in for service or parts or body repair or whatever else it may be. There are absolutely enough people there to do any of the numbers that are required. And customers are now buying value, yes, but it's always about service. If you look after somebody, you give them the answers that they look for and present them with an opportunity, you've got half the battle. It still winds me off the clock when people say, I did a great job, I did this, that, and the other, and I say, did you ask for the business? You just think, oh, come on. We've got to do that every single time. It's like your 300% rule, all the products, all the time to every customer, It's simple stuff and we overcomplicate it. It's...
This podcast, sorry, I'm cutting you off there, Sean. This podcast is all about sharing tips and ideas to sell more cars, sell more service, and improve the whole business. And one thing that we're noticing out there, we do these things called a sim check, where it's going to sound like a mystery shop, but it's different. I'm a frustrated airline pilot, maybe. And in the airline industry, every 6 months, you'll go and jump in an airliner's simulator to see how they can fly the plane, and they'll put them on one engine and do all that sort of stuff. Okay. And I've got a few friends that go into it and they hate it. They whinge and bitch about it all the time. But if they get it wrong, people die. If we get it wrong, we just don't sell a car. So what we do, Sean, is we say, right, come and sell this car from start to finish. We video the process, okay, and we review it with the person. But when the salesperson gets it wrong, we stop, we call a timeout there, and we say, hey, listen, did you trial close there? Did you ask for the business? But there's the two things that we see almost all the time. A salesperson thinks they've trial closed at the end of a demonstration drive. They think they have commitment. And they often say things like, it's nice, isn't it? Should we go and look at the numbers? Yes. So many times they say, have you got commitment there? They go, yeah, we have. It's not until we play it back with their manager and the manager hears what happens. So managers, listen to this. Sorry, I'm going into trainers mode. When your salespeople come into you and they want that deal stacked, don't say, have you trial closed? Every single salesperson say yes. Change the wording to, hey, what trial close question did you ask? And you'll be shocked. The other bit, Sean, you hit the nail on the head for me. I got to tell you, half the salespeople never ask for the business. I promise you. They'll put the deal in front of us and they say, so what do you think? What are your thoughts? How's that sound? If you're lucky. But then we're saying, what do you think? What's the last word you left in the customer's head? It's think. And what's the customer going to do? They're going to go and think about it. So it's so true about ask for the business there. It just doesn't happen. Sorry, that's not fair to say. It's one of the things that often needs work on. So,
well, you can improve your closing ratio overnight just by asking for the business. It's as simple as that. And, if you sell to 1 in 3, you'll end up selling to 1 in 2 if you just ask everybody every time, Now, there's a way of doing it. You don't want to kind of commoditize the brand or kind of railroad a customer into a decision they're not happy about. But that's where the skill of the sales manager, and I think what again has been missing for the last couple of years is that one-on-one coaching and developing and the training of the execs. It's great if they do one of your programs or something else, that's fine. But it's what's happening every day on the floor with that manager that's going to make that person more successful or otherwise.
A sales manager has to be a trainer. We turn the managers and trainers. We got to be interchangeable because your managers are training the guys 8 times a day, where we'll be coming in once a month training. They have to know the words and tracks. They have to load the lips for the salesperson to go and do that. Sean, I want to dig into something you said before. Most people listen to this podcast But I said before, I don't believe that used car prices are going to come off a cliff and 08, 09. I said, I'll get your views on that. I could see your head was shaking in agreement, but used car prices, it's not going to be like 08, 09 again. You're in the motor trade then, when Range Rover Sports were, what, $5-6 grand a month in the book?
Yeah. I can't foresee it, but again, I don't know what the 7 numbers are for the lottery on Saturday either. But if you look at the macroeconomic setup for used cars in the UK, we've still got limited supply in that 1 to 3 year park. If you look at things like train strikes and kind of terrible public transport shenanigans that are going on, people still want to have their own mobility, whether it's a car or a bike or a scooter or a bicycle, whatever it is. So there's going to be limited supply, still significant demand, and as long as, again, we can kind of bring those two things together, then I don't see prices moving significantly. In fact, Simon, if truth be told, I think the recent reductions in used car values are nothing to do with the market. It's to do with us bloody dealers, because it's coming to the dark mornings, early nights. It's a bit cold and miserable, and the end of the year's coming, and we've got nowhere left to run. So all of a sudden, managers and people like me are saying, right, let's clear some of that stock. Let's create some gaps for the new year. We can go and buy at the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. And we're talking that market down by our actions in the business. I don't think that's about a lack of consumer demand. I don't think it's necessarily about consumers being more demanding of the deal on the day either. And I think it's one of the things that's most frustrating about the motor trade, I think, is that, we like to talk ourselves into a spiral rather than actually all holding our nerve and just kind of going with the flow of the ebbs and flows of the market. So I don't foresee used car prices moving significantly backwards anytime soon. And I think even just this Q4 1-2% correction that they're kind of talking about, I think will bounce back. We always get a dead cat bounce in January on used values anyway. That will come again, I'm convinced. And I think as long as the economic environment doesn't deteriorate, it looks like it's stable now, for want of a better word, then I think there's still plenty of demand for the used cars that we've got around us.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said there. One bit that I have my little caveat, and I don't have the 7 numbers either, it's the EV market. And I keep on the EV side of it. I think what's happening with this, we know that Richie has turned around and pushed EVs back to 2035. But I want to get your views from when you were working with the OEM, because the OEMs still have to sell, what is it, 22% next year? The government's not taken that off. So how is that going to play out? Because we know that used electric vehicles are getting a bit of a kicking at the moment. The customers, I think the government's told the customers, don't worry about electric vehicle. We're not going to happen. I think that's the message I've sent. They've told all the manufacturers, tough, you still need to do it. So if the manufacturer has to produce these electric vehicles, are they going to have to force the market? Are we going to see a situation where there's going to be huge finance deposit contributions, allowances? Are there going to be 0% offers on them? I mean, as we speak at the moment, last week, Tesla knocked another £3,000 of a Tesla 3. What's your view on the whole EV market?
Yeah, well, do you know what? I could talk for about 3 hours just on that alone. I mean, if we go back to a new car perspective, you're dead right. The ZEV mandate next year, 22% of the manufacturers' registrations have got to be electric vehicles. Now, for businesses like BMW, they're kind of selling at that rate now, so it shouldn't be too much extra strain. But if you're Land Rover, for example, how many BEVs have they got to sell to make their 22%? So, it's different strokes for different folks. But what I think is happening in the EV market, there are already customer incentives of lower APRs and higher deposit contributions and that kind of thing. And the challenge at the moment is 80% of the BEV registrations in the UK are to a company, either a company car driver or to a small business because of the tax benefits. So the retail share of that is actually quite small. And I think what will need to happen over the next year, 2 years, is we need to find a way of convincing Mr. Retail Skeptic, if you like, to kind of make the EV plunge. At the same time, we'll have a proliferation of return electric vehicles from leaseco companies who've been buying them for the last 2 or 3 years. So you can definitely see a few interesting imbalances in play there, because you talked about used EVs and pricing. Actually, the market on them has stabilized now. We took an absolute bath in the end of first quarter and start of Q2 as they kind of.
Was that a lot to Elon Musk with the 19% he did in the first quarter? Do you feel or not?
Do you know what? Well, everything's connected for sure. So I've no doubt if your headline rate drops, then it does impact the used market. The thing is with any of those Tesla price reductions, it looks great on a bit of paper to a consumer to then go and present themselves at their business. But when you look at the monthly cost, the RV moves in the same direction. So, actually, there's no, 90% of people on a new car are buying it on finance. So there's no benefit of those constant price reductions. All it does is create a bit more of a kerfuffle in the mind of us in the market and also in the consumers.
Yes.
Because if prices are constantly coming down, you're always waiting for the next one before you make your decision. And it's like, where does it bottom out? So we've got a job of work to do there in both communicating to customers the values of EV. And I don't just mean, eco-wise and CO2 and all that jazz, but actually the whole life cost of an EV versus a internal combustion car. How many miles do you do? So here's the thing for me, Simon. So if you've got a driveway, not everybody does, but if you've got a driveway and can have a home charger, it is a no-brainer to have an EV. Simple as that. It doesn't matter what car it is, whether it's a BMW, an Audi, whatever. You stack up petrol versus EV. If you can charge at home, you're winning all day long. And nobody is communicating that well enough to customers at the moment. And, I still think... Sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but salespeople, please listen to this. That's so true. Everyone's talking about range and where do I charge? There's not enough chargers out on the road there. But honestly, how many people are charging them out on the road if they're charging overnight? Overnight is the time to charge it. It's the cheapest time to do it, but that's not the message we need to be. I don't know if our manufacturers are getting that message out enough either.
No, I think you're right. I mean, for me, you used the word range there, Simon. I've banned that because actually it creates that negative concern in a customer's mind. What we talk about is drive time. How long are you in the car every day? Oh, I drive 30 minutes a day each way to work. Great. Well, let me tell you, this EV can do 2 hours driving. So your quid's in. You'll never need to go to a fuel station again. And it's just framing it in a way that gets people to buy into the whole proposition, because it is a bit scary. We've all been early doors. We were all EV skeptics and stuff. I get that, but I'm just not sure either through the government or manufacturers or us as dealers, we're communicating in a way to a customer that really resonates with them. And we've got to do that because these cars are coming, and they're coming quick, and they're coming in bigger volumes every year for the next 5 years,
Well, this is something that people outside the industry would not realize. I still get the Facebook people saying, oh, no, EV, it's going down a dead end. And, oh, no, it's I love my petrol car and we're going to go hydrogen. But the manufacturers are so far down that development route, they can't turn it around. Even if they wanted to, Sean, tomorrow. It's coming. Get used to it. We're going to have to do it because from the OEM point of view, what is it? 7 years development cycle, something like that?
Yeah. And so funnily enough, only last week we were at the dealer launch for the new i5 saloon, fully electric, all the bells and whistles. And I mean, the car drives fantastically. The product substance is great. The technology is fabulous. What we've got to do is get people to drive it, get people to see how good value it is, and that's the only thing that we need to do on every EV, whatever your brand or franchise is, or if you're a used EV specialist. I think part of the challenge for us is we've lost some of the skill, personality, whatever the right terminology is, to have a conversation with a customer that's really engaging. I think we've fallen into the features dump or the technology dump, and we need to just rewind back, see what's important to a customer, and when they tell us, if we listen enough to them, when we're doing the presentation or the demo drive, we talk about the things that are their hot buttons. It's not hard, this job, Simon, is it?
No, it's not. And listen, if I could do it, Sean, I started washing cars for a living. If I could, anyone can do it. But Sean, we know that we have lots of trainers listening to this podcast and trainers working for manufacturers. One thing I would say is I get there's so much technology on a modern car. Whenever I get salespeople who've been to a manufacturer's training course, though, they're always talking about the technology, and there is so much there. But don't forget the selling skills there. And it is that feature dump. Never, ever forget the advantages and the benefit, the paint the story, to sell it. And that's what you did when you barred range anxiety, bar the word range, and just turn around and say, how long does it take you to get to work? Half an hour. You got 2 hours there. That is talking about the customer using it in the day and day. Because who does a range, how many miles their trip is to work? No, I know I'm sitting in the car for 40 minutes. That's what they know there. And it's so manufacturer trainers, listen to this. Get back to good old-fashioned selling skills. I think the manufacturers have gone away from that, and quite rightly, because there is so much technology they've had to get into us there.
Well, I heard something the other day. I can't remember where it was. It was either a podcast or on the news or whatever. And they were talking about MP3 players when they first came out. There's one for the teenagers.
Yes.
And they were saying, how many gigs of this and bytes of this and that and the other when they were trying to sell them. And it was turning people off because it was too complicated. Apple comes along and says 1,000 songs in your pocket. So and you've got it. You've got it. Yeah. So it's the technology's great, but what does it do for me?
Yes.
And using language that's simple and easy to understand. That's the critical bit for me. Yeah.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.